Still down in the dumps, so forgive me if this goes a little bit haywire, but gotta pump these out every Thursday if I can. And the winner of the poll actually ended up as a tie again, and I wasn't to see what came in first. So I'm going to go off of what you saw for the title, the Hoffman and Marcus situation, and how their relationship started off in the beginning of the Gears franchise and how it ended at the very end by 3. We know that they're both alive in 4, but we haven't seen them interact. So from the beginning to the end, let's take a look for this Gear Talk on how Marcus and Hoffman went from being okay with each other, hating each other, not really caring about each other, and then seeing each other as best as buddies again. Now, that open was kind of scattershot because it's not really like that. And pretty much starting this off, we'll talk about how Hoffman originally actually didn't like Adam even. So Adam and Hoffman's relationship, Adam always was okay with Hoffman, but Hoffman wasn't the biggest fan of Adam. He saw him as just pretty much like a scientist, someone who worked in the back while his men were going out in the front and risking their lives. He just sat in the back and developed things. It wasn't really that heavy of a view he had, but it was somewhat like that. He didn't care for Adam that much. He did know him. He never knew him personally, though. Bernie did tell him now and then he was a decent guy, but that's all he ever got about Adam. He did, however, know about Marcus by this point, and he knew about how he was Adam's son and how he was a decent soldier, and he heard these great things about him. So even though he didn't care much for Adam, he did hear about the good things and how much of a great soldier his son actually was. Now, when it came to the hammer strikes, when they were first coming down, Prescott decided on that, and they decided, okay, we're going to give these people some time before we actually bring the hammer down, you could say. There was a point when it was about 16 minutes beforehand, if I remember right, where Adam came up to Hoffman and asked, well, is everything okay on your end? You know, how's your family? And that's when he tells Adam, my wife is still out there missing. And we do end up learning that Marcus is actually taken care of and he's back in Jacinto and he's going to be safe. And they talk about that for a moment. Even though Hoffman still doesn't have the greatest feelings towards Adam, he is at least relieved to hear that, oh, well, at least Marcus, your son, is going to be okay. My wife may be missing and that might be bad, but Marcus will at least be okay by the sound of it. Going from there after the hammer is dropped, Marcus and Hoffman actually end up coming face to face during a mission. And this mission really isn't the best one because I believe this is the first time they actually come across each other in a mission standpoint. And this is when Marcus decides to go against Hoffman's orders to go and save his father. Because at the time, I believe they lost Athera, or I forget what the name of the battle was. I'll stick it down here if I can remember. But he pretty much leaves. Marcus just looks at Hoffman and says, I've been following orders since I was a kid. Well, by a kid, 18-wise. I've done it since I first started. I've done it every single day. I've done everything I can. So forgive me for telling you this, but pretty much F off. I'm going to go save my dad. Now, the problem is that normally Hoffman's not a big fan of that because someone just directly went against his orders and just pretty much told him to F off. No one's a fan of that. But Marcus ran off with a certain, not a cylinder, but it's a circular device that's the targeting system for the hammer. If you ever see the hammer and you see like the little aiming thing that's on, it's something like that, so you're able to put where the hammer's going to hit. He took that with him to go save his father. So when he left and Hoffman needed it, they didn't have it, and a lot of soldiers got wiped out. And that ended up leading pretty much everyone throwing, I was about to say Hoffman, but Marcus on trial for pretty much desertion. And Hoffman was 100% for sending him right off to prison. Hoffman even went up and he even spoke out and said, yeah, he screwed us over big time, send him right to prison, screw him. Now, this obviously didn't sit well with anyone because Marcus is a hero from the Pendulum Wars during the Asheville Fields incident. He's very much well known. Dom is also well known. Dom is there speaking for Marcus, saying you can't just throw him into prison like this. You can't throw him into the slab because he was already decided, I believe, the slab is where he was going. So also, if it wasn't for the fact that, you know, in the background Adam was pulling some strings, it would have been a lot worse. I think he was going to get the death sentence. But yeah, with Hoffman not knowing about the Adam situation and all that, you know, Adam is the one who pretty much saved Marcus's life at the end for that situation. And Hoffman's sitting there pretty much trying to give him the worst sentencing they can. Because Hoffman is pissed at this point. He is angry. His men died. He's a by-the-books guy. and he sees Marcus as this guy who just disobeyed the order and got all these people killed. He does not care 1 ounce for Marcus at this point. He straight up hates him. That's why when the point comes out that we know of in Gears of War, when he says a traitor like you shouldn't wear the uniform, we don't understand it until we get more insight from the books and we get further into the games that we understand, like, Hoffman actually had a decent reason for not caring for him. It's not like Hoffman just heard about the traitorous acts of Marcus. He knew about it. He was there for all of it. When he calls him a traitor, he means it. He knows everything that went down. So you would think that Marcus is holding this vendetta against Hoffman for being one of the people that sent him to the slab. And we'll get into later on how Marcus feels, but just keep that in your head. Hoffman's one of the reasons that Marcus ended up where he was. Not the main reason, but he was one of the leading voices that sent him there. Now, we already talked about how Hoffman's not the biggest fan of Marcus, but that doesn't mean he hates him so much that he's willing to let the man die. Now, we ended up learning in Gears of War that Dom went to go and save Marcus from the slab. We know this, and we know that Hoffman really didn't bat an eye when he met Marcus at the plaza. We know that there wasn't like, Dom, why would you go and do this? It's because Dom openly made it known he was going to go and save Marcus after the whole situation with the Lambent coming over and taking over the prison. It was originally stated, get everyone out of there, save everyone. And Hoffman said, everyone except Marcus, let him die. Just let him go. We learned later on that when it really came down to it, Hoffman really didn't want to sacrifice men, and if it wasn't for the fact that the Locusts overtook the whole prison, he probably would have went in and saved Marcus. The issue is that Hoffman's not going to give up his men. He would never do that. He would never put his men in such a situation. It would be death, especially for a traitor in his eyes like Marcus. Now, when Dom went to get him, it was a one-man thing. He was going to slip in. No one would know because, again, he's special forces. He's going to get in and out with no one knowing. And when he told Hoffman this, Hoffman even said, you might as well bring some extra armor and a gun just in case. Because he knew he was going to go get Marcus out, and Marcus was going to need to be armored up and set to get out of that prison. Now, we're going to cut forward again, because we don't really get that much interaction for them during the first Gears of War game. We don't. We get some later on when he says, like, you know, the bomb didn't go off, Phoenix, blah, 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 blah. We know how that chestnut goes off, and when, little side note, Rom gets that dude, grabs the helmet, and just crushes it in his hand. Amazing scene. Anyway, we get to the end of the game where Marcus just finished letting off the light mass bomb, and he's being carried up into the King Raven, and Dom's got his arm, but Dom can't get him all the way in. Then you see Hoffman looming over Marcus. And I don't know about you, first time I saw that, I didn't think Hoffman was going to be the kind of guy to just kick him right back down. I never saw that as a thing that was going to happen. But you see Hoffman look at him for a moment until he finally offers him a hand to get him up there. And this is the first major act we see from Hoffman that says, like, the road of redemption has begun. These two may have animosity toward each other, but that doesn't mean it's going to get in their way of what they're doing. Because when Hoffman offers him his hand, he kind of realizes, like, okay, this is Marcus Fenix. He did just, with Dom, defeat Rom. They did just let off the light mass bomb. And I'm kind of going to need this man. I need to rely on this person. I can't have my personal feelings being an issue when it comes to the COG army. So that hand is more of a symbol of not, I forgive you or anything, because that comes on later. That's more of a sign of, like, I'm willing to put my crappy feelings towards you aside so we can get this job done. Now, when it comes to how the relationship goes from here on out, it does seem, if you go by the games, they seem to forgive each other slowly, which they do. Marcus already has a feeling of, he doesn't hold guilt or animosity or any sort of feelings like that towards Hoffman. You know, he's not sorry for what he did when he left to go to his father. He's not sorry about any of that. Just like Hoffman's not sorry for sending him to the prison in the first place. Neither of them are willing to apologize for that because they don't feel like they were in the wrong. It's the feelings held between each other afterwards that really start to gnaw at one another. Not Marcus that much, because Marcus does come to the sense, and you don't really get this from that much when you read it, he's already forgiven Hoffman in a sense. He doesn't hold any ill will towards what Hoffman did, because he understood, I just left my squad to go and help my father. I understand I was in the wrong. it was more like Hoffman felt a lot of it, because he was willing to leave at the time in his mind. He was willing to leave Marcus to die in prison when he told everyone else to get out of there to free all the other prisoners. He was willing to let this man die and go to death. And at the time, he didn't know why he even said for that. But it was more like his internal brain was clock, whatever you want to say, was running on its own. Like, screw this guy. Look at everything he did. Screw his father. Screw him. I guess the apple didn't fall far from the tree in my mind. And it just starts gnawing at Hoffman constantly every day after that, because you realize that's not who I am. I can't just hold these feelings toward this man. Yeah, he screwed us in the end, but he didn't do it for any horrible reason like he was a coward. He did do it to help his father. He did do it because there was a reason behind it. He wasn't just leaving the battlefield like some scared little soldier I've seen countless times since I've been leading. No, there is a reason. And that does lead into the first book, when they probably have their largest confrontation on this matter. So when we get to the first book, we have something called, and I need to see it because I could never get the name of this correct when I was going through it in my own notes, just trying to memorize it, the Northern Gate Evacuation. So this was a time when the locusts were coming in, and this was in an area where the Gears had a lot of their production areas for like vegetables and all that kind of stuff. And they were trying to get everything from there evacuated out of the area from the oncoming locust. Now, while they're doing this, it comes to the point they're doing the last of the evacuation, I believe. And because this is a bit muddy in my mind, I can't remember too much unless I go back and reread the entire scene. But long story short, it gets to the point where Hoffman and Ty are together. And they're pretty much leading the very end of everything, getting the last people out. And then they hear that there might still be some people that need to be saved from a locust onslaught that's happening close by. So they go there knowing that it's probably a trap, only to learn that there's no one there. The locust just brought them in without any bait, just willing to kill them. Hoffman and Ty, knowing the situation, they turn their comms off. They don't want backup because they know it's just a suicide run. People are going to die because they're about to die right there. During this, Hoffman gets shot in the ankle. I believe it's during this scene he's shot in the ankle. And it's him and Ty that are fighting to the end, and he knows Ty has got a lot of blood on his hands from a lot of men he's killed, so he knows him and Ty can handle business, and they're willing to just die. In comes Marcus and Dom. They turn around and go get them, and surprisingly, they do get them out of there, because, again, Hoffman and Ty thought they were dead men, probably. So they get them out of there, and they bring them back to the main camp, and when they're back there, Marcus and Dom bring Hoffman to the emergency care area, because, again, he just got a bullet that went right through his ankle. He's squashing in blood the entire time. It's got to be looked at. And while Marcus is there, they figure probably going to give him a checkup too, so we can make sure that you're fine and you didn't get anything that might have nicked you somewhere we don't know. This is probably the strongest scene that these two have when it comes to their animosity towards one another, their relationship, because Hoffman is very open when he shows his dislike towards Marcus. Marcus is a very quiet dude, so you can't tell what he's thinking unless you know the guy. And it's not brought up until this point. Marcus really doesn't harbor any feelings towards Hoffman that are negative. He probably did a while ago, but he doesn't care about that anymore. Hoffman openly questions him about things too, like, listen, like, why did you go back for your dad? Why did you do this? Why would you do this? And Hoffman's yelling his head off because he's been trying to get this out for a while. And it gets to the point where they're finally getting Marcus out of there because he's done. And Hoffman finally breaks. And it's one of the only times you see this, especially this early on in the franchise. He openly breaks out and says, listen, I'm sorry. I screwed up. I was going to leave you for dead. My bad. I'm sorry that I screwed you over by leaving you there. And it really doesn't hit you. And Marcus doesn't show it because, again, he's Marcus. But that's the biggest time they have that they talk about that problem and what happened and the issue. Because Marcus, again, he doesn't openly talk to people. He doesn't do that. That's not Marcus. Hoffman will if he has to. But again, he's the face of the leader of the military. You can't just openly do that. So, you know, the situation was right. They're the only two in an emergency room. They're talking to each other. So he breaks all the walls and just says, I'm sorry. I messed up, Marcus. And he's not saying it like it's all somber. He's screaming it to him. Like, that's the only way Marcus is going to get the message from Hoffman. So that's the only way Hoffman can really deliver it. So that was probably the biggest collision of those two. Not physically, but when it came to them emotionally. That's the biggest you'll ever see out of those two. Now, I know that's really early on, especially since that's book 1 that happens right after the first game, and you still have the graphic novels, the rest of the books, then the second game, rest of the books, third game, and you have 4, but they never do anything in 4 with those two. But even though it's early on, the rest of the franchise from there on out, I'm going to say franchise instead of books and all that because it goes through all of them, they do slowly start to mend that bond because they realize they need to rely on each other. Marcus sees Hoffman as like, he's probably the best leader we have. Compared to Prescott, he's definitely leading these people correctly. I see him as a leader. Hoffman, on the other hand, also sees that Marcus is one of the best soldiers there is. I need to rely on this man. I can't just sit around and have these harsh feelings towards him just because of something that happened. It happened. We all need to move on. And he's a decent person. He had his reasons to do it. So as they go, they slowly do start to bridge that gap between one another. It's not to the point where they're hanging out in the mess hall, having drinks with each other, talking about the good old days. Nothing like that. But it does get to the point where it's considered Hoffman's inner circle at that point by Prescott. And in that inner circle is Marcus. Marcus is one of his most trusted men when it comes to Hoffman. So, by the time you get to Gears of War 3, there's the scene when you get to Anvil Gate. And Hoffman he's talking to Marcus like he's a normal person, no problems with him at all. And I really do give it to Karen Traviss for her writing for all this, because you really might not have gotten that sense in 3 if it wasn't for her writing it. But you really can tell in that small conversation they have, they don't feel the animosity towards each other anymore. Marcus never really felt it. Hoffman certainly did. But Hoffman has evolved throughout this entire franchise. And he's finally come to the point where he doesn't see Marcus as an enemy. He doesn't see him as a traitor. Especially by that point, because the COG doesn't even exist. He doesn't really care about the military anymore. But, yeah, it's definitely a rocky road, you could say, between these two and where they came towards the end. And that'll do it. There's definitely other moments in the series where they come across each other. Like, at one point when Hoffman's debating about the Prescott situation, he actually does ask Marcus about, like, politically, what's the best course of action in his mind. He asked Marcus that. But I feel just for the base of their relationship, by that point that happened in the first book, and definitely by what comes from here on out, it's probably the biggest character development you see between these two. Because, again, it's hinted at in the first game, but you don't really understand until you get further in, like, with the first book, which is... I gotta look over for a moment. It's... Let's see. I think it's not Jacinto's Remnant. Asviel Fields, you get that. Jacinto's Remnant comes next, and that's after, too. The Slab, you definitely get a lot of that. So, Asviel Fields and the Slab, if you want to know about the relationship between those two and how it devolved, then grew back to what it is now. And I really hope by 5 we at least get something between those two, because Hoffman's an older man and now Marcus is a bit older, so I want to imagine they'll have like a grumpy old man conversation between each other one of these times. Not hating each other, but just like the movie Grumpy Old Man. They don't hate each other, they keep wanting to mess with each other, kind of. So, yeah, that'll do it. I want to thank you guys for sticking through on this one. I know this one's a bit lengthy like the other one. I'm not trying for them to be close to the 20-minute range or on it. I still have a cold, as you can tell. Sorry for the random breaks. I've been needing to cough like that, but I don't want it on camera. I just said to show you that one. Thanks again for watching this one. Like, comment, subscribe, follow us on Twitter, all that fun stuff. Ring a bell if you want. Again, sorry this one was a bit scattershot and in a hurry, but a lot of information, and with my current condition, I didn't really want to push it that hard. So, you guys have a great one. Thank you again for sticking through me while I've been sick. I promise I'll be getting better soon, and I'll make these a bit more quality friendly. So, you guys have a great one. There are my notes. See you later.